Hi friends, welcome to codewithsugi YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to discuss about constructors. So, in the previous videos, we have discussed about how to create a constructor and what are the types of constructors we have in Java. There are few things which we need to know about constructors. So, we're going to discuss those things in this video. So, before we get into this video, if you are new to our channel and if you are not aware of what we have discussed till date, so you don't need to worry. We always used to add all the links in the description. So, please go ahead and have a look on the previous videos. So now let's get into this video. So for that I'm going to create a new class called constructor test. Okay, so for this constructor test, so we all know how to create a constructor. So it has to start with the access modifier and it has to follow the class name. So I have created one zero argument constructor. In the previous video I have showed about the strict math. Okay, so the strict math class is coming from our Java base class, right? So how to go to Java base class? We have to go to JRE system library, then we have to go to java.lang. Okay, then if you press yes, okay, then you can find the classes which is starting with S. So here we have a class called strict math. Okay, fine. So if you come here, okay, so we have a constructor, but this constructor is created with the access modifier private, right? So what they have specified it here, don't let anyone instantiate this class. Okay, why? Because if you do control O, then you can able to see the methods, constructors and the members in that class. Now I'm gonna scroll this little bit. So if the methods or members is specified like this with yes, then this is the static variable, and if a method is specified like this, then this is the static method. Okay, so see, so in the strict math class, all the methods and members are static methods and members. So that's the reason they are not allowing us to create the object for this class. Okay, so if you mark it as private, then you will not access this out of the class, right? So then that's the reason they have made it as like, don't let anyone instantiate this class, because whatever we have in this class, everything is static. So if it is a static, then it's a more of class level accessible variables, so you can access it with the class name itself. So that's the power of static, right? Fine. So now you know where we will use this private. So if it is a protected, then it will be accessible only to its subclasses, right? I think now you have some good idea about why we are using access modifier before the constructors. And there is another one class, that is math class. If you open this math class, this math class also will have only the private constructor. Okay, so see, it has a private math. Why? Because if you do control O, then you can able to see the members and methods, right? So here also whatever we have, everything is kind with static. So that's the reason they are not allowing us to create object for these classes. I think now you have some idea about private constructors, right? Now I think you may have some doubts like why we are having so many constructors in a class. Say for example, so if we take some classes, then you can see 4 or 3 constructors to initialize the object. Why we need that number of constructors in a class? Okay, that we need to discuss, right? So for that I'm going to take few variables like integer num1 and then integer num2 and then float num1, then float num2 and then double num1 and then double num2. Now here we are having a zero argument constructor, but I'm going to make this as a parameterized constructor. Okay, so it's going to take integer num1, okay, integer num2. This is one constructor, and I'm going to create another one constructor. So this one will be float num1 then float num2. Okay, so the third one will be double num1 double num2. So in this class we're going to perform only addition, but we're going to perform whole number addition and then decimal number additions. Okay, in the decimal number we have two types, one is float and another one is double. So to differentiate all those things, I just took these three data types so that we can differentiate it easily, right? Fine. So if you want to assign a value to the class level variable, then we have to do this dot num1 equal to num1. Okay, fine. The same way, this dot num2 equal to num2. Okay, so here float num1 equal to num1, right? So the next one, float num2 equal to num2. Again here double num1 equal to num1. Then again double num2 equal to num2. If you noticed here, in the first constructor alone I'm using this. In the second constructor, I'm not using this. We have discussed about this in the previous videos also, but anyway, I will cover it here also. Why we are using this means, if we are not using this over here, then Java will not identify the class level variable, because this class level variable and the local variable which we are passing in the constructor have the same name. To differentiate it, we have to use this. If the variable names are having a difference, then we don't need to specify this over here. This is one extra information you have to keep in mind. To conclude this, if the local variable and the global variable has the same name, then you have to use this keyword to differentiate it. Okay, now we have successfully created the constructors. Then here I am going to do public integer addition. Gonna return num1 plus num2. Same way, I'm going to have a float and it will be a float addition. Okay, so it's going to return float num1 plus float num2, and the last one method name would be double addition. So here I'm going to take double num1, this will be double num2. Okay, fine. Now I'm going to create an object for this constructor test. Okay, I'm going to say test equal to new constructor test. So another one thing which you have to keep in mind is, if we have our own constructor in our class, then we have to utilize it. Then the JVM will not create any constructor for us. Okay, so the another one point is, if you have a constructor in your class and there is no zero argument constructor in class, then you cannot use that, because if you have a constructor, then you have to utilize it, right? So due to that rule, you cannot use the constructor which is not available in your class. So that's the reason here we are getting an error like the constructor test is undefined. So now I'm going to remove this. I'm going to do control space. See, here we have only three options. One is taking integer variables, another one is taking float, the third one is taking double. So now I'm going to take the integer one and then I'm going to assign the value 30, 40. Now I'm going to call this test dot addition. So we are just returning the value, so we have to print this method to see the output. Now our expectation is 70. Okay, so I'm going to say sum of two int numbers, or just I'm going to run this program to see the output. See, we are getting the output as expected. So now I'm going to create one more object. I'm going to say it's as a test1, and here I'm going to say 30.0007 f. Okay, and then 40.007 f. Okay, something like this. So here I'm using the float constructor, right? The sum of two float numbers are, here we have to say test1 dot, then we have to call the method float addition, right? Fine, I'm going to run this program to see the output. So we are getting the output as expected. Okay, So this how we are giving flexibility to the customers to access our class. Okay, so that is the main reason for having more than one constructor into a class. Okay, while we creating a class, we cannot restrict the customers to access it. Okay, so we have to give full flexibility to access our class. So that's the reason whenever you get into the base classes, there are so many constructors into a single class. They are giving so much of flexibility to access that class based on our need. Okay, so let's we take this example. Okay, there may be a customer, he going to use only integer addition. Okay, and there may be a customer who needs only float numbers, and there may be a customer who needs only double numbers. So we have to give a flexibility to access based on their need. Okay, so if you see this example, we are having three different types of variables. One is integer, and another one type is float, and another one type is double. So that's the reason we have created three constructors. One is taking integer number, so whenever we call this, only this integer variables get initialized with the value whatever we are giving. Okay, now I think you have some idea about why we are having different constructors in a single class, and already we have discussed it, right? Java will allow the constructor overloading, so this is also a one example for constructor overloading. Here in line number 18 it's taking integer arguments, in line number 24 it's taking float arguments, but the constructor name is same. We're going to discuss about constructor chaining. So constructor chaining in the sense, once we get into this constructor, okay, we can call any other constructors into this constructor. So for example, if we want to call this float constructors into your integer constructor, then you have to use like this. Okay, whenever you say this off, then it will point the constructor only. Okay, so this of here we don't have any zero argument constructor. All the constructors are parameterized constructor, right? Here somehow we need to provide float value or double value, right? So in this example, just I'm going to take a float value. So for that, what I'm going to do is num1, okay, plus 0.5, then comma num2 plus 0.5. So when you add a 0.5 to an integer, obviously it will turn to a float value, right? So that's the reason I'm just adding it here. Now it's not complaining anything, right? So what I'm going to do, if I do open declaration, see, it's directly going to the double, because here I haven't specified f at the end of the value. So that's the reason it's considered it as a double. Okay, fine, I will keep it same as like this. So if you do f at the end of the value, then if you do control and then click on this method, then it will go to the float as expected. Fine, now I'm going to remove this. Okay, whenever we initialize the constructor test with integer number, what it will do, it will directly come here to the line number 21, and from here we will initialize the constructor which taking a double values by adding 0.5 into the integer values. So now I'm going to create one more object. Okay, for this class I'm going to say test2, but I'm going to say it's a 300 and this one is 400. Now integer numbers are this, and then I have to say test2 dot addition, and then sum of two double numbers are test2 dot double addition. Okay, so now we have a differentiator over here to understand it in a proper way. So now I'm going to run this program to see the output. See, whenever we call the test2, it's giving a flexibility to call addition and double addition. Okay, so what is the value I have given in this? I have given 300 and 400. So whenever you add 300 and 400, the value has to be 700. That's fine. And I'm adding 0.5 to this value to initialize the double constructor. So the value will be 300.5 and then 400.5. So it will be 701. So see, we are getting the output as expected. So this is how you can do constructor chaining also. Okay. So this is called as constructor chaining. Fine. And whenever you are using a constructor chaining, Okay, the constructor chaining should be in the first line. Okay, so say for example, now I'm gonna cut this and I'm going to place it here. Immediately the compiler will give us a error. So it will say call must be the first statement in the constructor. And already we have discussed about this and super, right? So you cannot use this and super in the constructor. Here, this how you can access the super class constructor also, right? So if you provide bracket like this, then it will look for zero argument constructor in your parent class or super class. Okay, but the problem is whether you have to use this or super in the first line. Okay, you cannot use like this in any of the constructors. So if you want to call your super class constructor, then you have to use super. At that time you cannot use this and you cannot do the constructor chaining over here. Okay, please make sure we always using any one in the first line of the constructor, that is super or this. So I think now we have covered almost everything about constructor, and I hope now you have some better understanding about constructor. Still, if you guys have any doubts in this constructor, then please put your comments in the comment section so that we will have a look and we will revert back to you as soon as possible. And please don't forget, we always used to add all the programs into the GitHub and the links are available in the description. Thanks for watching our videos. Please subscribe our channel for more videos like this. Keep supporting us. Thank you.